Hello and welcome. I've just popped in from the garden to explore a few ideas on tea with you today. I've been on visisted.com a fair bit lately. That's a great tea forum and a lot of things have been discussed. And from those discussions, thinking about them while I was doing some gardening, I had some ideas. And being a very lazy gardener, I thought I'd much rather come in here and make some tea. So this is something I'm sure you all recognise, and this is something that I am dead against. Good quality tea should not be imprisoned in a bag, and poor quality tea just shouldn't be. So what I have here today is 4 fine teas and a basket from the garden. And my wife's a keen gardener and she grows some wonderful things, and the most wonderful thing she grows is our herb garden, and we're going to explore that today. So the first thing I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to get some Moroccan mint. Now Moroccan mint is generally 50-50 mix of green tea and peppermint leaves. Nicely dried, and I'm just going to use this little teapot. Very much like to handle tea, I'm not big on teaspoons. And I'm going to add some water to that and let it steep. Now I'm not going to do anything more to that yet, because we'll come back to that one. Now the second thing I've looked at is some quite savoury herbs, and I'm looking at just adding a little flavour adjunct to a tea that's quite savoury to begin with. That is the Daintree, which is here. Now this is an Australian grown tea, marvellous tea, very earthy sort of flavour. It's got a rich warm spiciness to it that comes from the soil that it's grown in, which is in Queensland. So I'm going to put a couple of grams of that in there, and I'm just going to grab a couple of herbs and bash them around a bit. Now for this one I'm going to use some thyme, which I think I'll just throw in there, and then I've got some sage. I could cut that up on the board, but I'm much more hands-on, so we'll just throw some sage in there, and we'll put some hot water in. Lovely, the aroma coming off that straight away is beautiful. And we'll put that one over there for later review. The next thing I'm going to do is take my favourite teapot. This is Cyril, my glass teapot, and I'm going to make something really special here. What we're going to do is we're going to take some Pai-Mutan, very much a favourite tea of mine, and we're going to put some of that in here. Right, now that is a gorgeous Chinese white tea. I think it's quite an exclusive tea. Some people argue that point, but I think it's just the best of the whites. What I'm going to add to that is a couple of things. Firstly, there's a passion fruit herb. I have no idea what the botanical name of this is, but it smells like passion fruit and it has these beautiful yellow flowers. So I'm just going to actually bung the whole thing in there. That's some of the leaves. Now additionally, while I was coming back from the herb garden, I took a chance to grab some rose petals and throw them in there too. Now, if you're in the habit of buying rose tea, which is a lovely thing, you have to understand that most of the flavour in rose tea comes from rose oil that's been added to the tea. So you might see 2 or 3 petals in there and think that's all it takes to actually rose flavour a tea, but it's not. If you just mix tea and rose petals, you'll get a very subtle rose flavour. But there's things you can do. So here we have Cyril with this amazing collection of colours in it. We've got the yellow passion fruit herb, we've got the pink and white rose petals, and we've got the green colour of the white tea. And I can actually see the different colour infusion swirling around in there. And we'll put that aside for later review. We're building up a bit of a collection here. The last thing I want to do is add some zest to a Chinese jasmine tea. Now, I don't mean I want to add orange zest, just a general zest. Now this is already a floral tea. It's a green tea, and it has a wonderfully flowery fragrance with the jasmine in there. Let's have a bit of And it's a lovely calming tea, and it's a great thing to have at night. But what I'm going to do is add a couple of elements to it. First thing I'm going to add is some lavender. Now this is just freshly picked lavender. You can use dried lavender, whatever, but I'm just going to shove it in there. And I've also picked some of this for an unusual note. This is a form of sage called pineapple sage, and it has a real pineapple flavour to it, but I find that mixed in with jasmine and the lavender, it just adds a fruity note to this tea. It's really quite special. And again, we add some water. This water was boiled about 5 minutes before I started shooting, which is about right. So I'll put the lid on Clarence here, and there we go. So now we have a parade of teas here, and first thing I'm going to look at is the first one I did, which was the Moroccan mint. Now you might recall we didn't do anything at all to that, we simply made it up. I'm going to add some sugar to the pot. I know that's bizarre. Moroccan mint, the way mint tea is drunk in Africa is with copious amounts of sugar. So we're going to be authentic. And the reason I'm adding it to the pot is quite simple. My glass is very small and I don't want to have to stir the glass once I've poured it. So this is what I'm going to do with this. I've got myself a Moroccan tea glass. I'm going to shove some mint in it. So it's fresh mint from the garden. And I'll just grab my strainer here. Pour a delightful cup of Moroccan tea. Don't pour it right to the top. That way you'll only slightly burn your guests' fingers, but it's worth the experience. So I often serve guests that. It looks sensational, it tastes sensational. You can also do exactly the same thing, but ice the tea down and serve it as an iced mint tea, which is delightful. Right, okay, the next thing we're going to look at is our savoury tea. This was made with the Daintree. I'm going to pop it in this teacup here. And we'll just pour a little of that out to try. It's just looks like Daintree to look at. The herbs don't actually add anything to it, colour-wise, but when I try it, it's marvellously savoury. The thyme really comes through. The sage is a nice back note. That's highly recommended. And I would serve that with a roast. You know, the old thing about parsley, sage, rosemary and thyme being a great combination for roast. Daintree is a great tea to have with meat. If you're having a steak, have a Daintree. If you're not in Australia and can't get it, that's very unfortunate. But definitely a tea to have with red meat, and if you add these things to it, serve it with a roast. I sometimes add rosemary as well. Absolutely beautiful. And have another little sip of that one. Fantastic. Now, I'm going to go to the last one first. This is our China Jasmine. It's got the lavender in it, a little bit of pineapple sage in it. I'm going to pour that in a Chinese tea bowl. Now it's steeped for about 3.5 minutes, which is possibly not quite enough for this tea, but we'll give it a go. There's plenty in the pot, so I can always go back to it afterwards. Incidentally, I picked a peach from my tree. I'm not adverse to slicing a few bits of peach and dropping them into a jasmine tea as well. It's quite a nice idea. That is beautiful. The lavender is very fresh. The lavender really comes out very quickly in the tea. The longer you steep it, the more of the jasmine and tea characteristics will come back to you. But up front, it's wonderfully lavendery. If you're having trouble sleeping, I really can't think of anything better than a green tea with lavender. Just try to stay awake while you make it. It's very soporific. Right, and now we come to what I'm really looking forward to. Cyril here with the Pai Mutan, which is already fantastic, and it's got the passion fruit herb and it's got the rose petals. So we'll give that a go, and we'll use my favourite tea cup for that. Just empty the strainer a bit so we don't get all the other flavours mingled. Okay, right. Now, obviously having some problems with the herbs throwing themselves up the spout, but we'll persevere. Oh, isn't that lovely? Alright. So, now all I can smell here is that passion fruit herb. It's extremely strong, just a lovely tea. That is absolutely wonderful. So what I'm going to do now is, rather than go back to gardening, I'm going to turn off the camera and drink this pot dry, and then I'll probably re-steep it. Cheers.